My name is Eliza Mercer, and for 4 years my family told everyone in our hometown that I had vanished. Then, one rainy Wednesday in October, my younger brother found me. I was standing in the kitchen of my small house in Greenville, South Carolina, spreading peanut butter over apple slices for my 3-year-old daughter when someone knocked. I opened the door expecting a delivery driver. Instead, Owen stood on my porch. He looked older than the brother I remembered. His beard was flecked with gray, his shoulders had thickened, and he held his phone tightly against his palm, as though it were the only solid thing in the world. "Eliza," he whispered. Before I could answer, my daughter came running down the hall in mismatched socks. "Mommy, the apples are falling apart." Owen looked over my shoulder. His eyes settled on her face, then on the framed photograph behind her, the one of me and Jonah beside the unfinished porch, and all the color drained from him. "You have a child?" I did not invite him inside. He backed down the steps, already calling someone. I heard my mother answer before he reached his truck. "Mom," he said, staring at me through the rain. "You need to tell me the truth. She's here. And she has a little girl." That phone call should have ended the lie. Instead, my mother used it to prepare the biggest performance of her life. What I did 4 days later, in front of nearly 200 people who had prayed for their lost daughter, is the reason I am finally telling this story. The front door of my house is yellow, not pale yellow, but the bright color of daffodils after a hard winter. I painted it during my 8th month of pregnancy, balancing a paint tray on a cardboard box while my friend Naomi shouted through the screen that pregnant women were not supposed to climb ladders. I told her it was only the second step. She told me grief had damaged my judgment. We were both right. Inside that yellow door, my daughter Ren and I built a quiet life. I work in the emergency department at St. Catherine's Medical Center. My shifts are 12 hours on paper and often 14 in reality. I can recognize internal bleeding from the color of someone's lips, remember 6 medication schedules at once, and remain calm while an entire room is panicking. At home, I lose my keys twice a week. Our life is daycare, hospital shifts, library Saturdays, pancakes on Sunday mornings, and walks to the park when the weather allows. It is not glamorous, but every part of it belongs to us. For 4 years, nobody from Roanoke, Virginia, had crossed our threshold. That was a choice. It was not, however, the story my mother told. She said I disappeared. I have always disliked that word. Mist disappears. Footprints disappear in snow. A person does not simply disappear when her family knows her telephone number, her employer, and the city where she lives. What actually happened was simpler. I stopped sending money, and my family stopped asking whether I was alive. The money began 10 years earlier at my nursing school graduation dinner. I was 25, the first person in the Mercer family to earn a university degree. I had paid for it with loans, scholarships, weekend shifts at a nursing home, and enough instant noodles to ruin them for life. My mother, Margaret, invited everyone to our house in Roanoke. She made baked ham, green beans, and a lemon cake with my name written in blue icing. My diploma stood in the middle of the table between the salt shaker and a bowl of gravy. For one evening, I was not the difficult daughter or the selfish one. I was proof that my mother had raised someone successful. After dinner, when the relatives had gone and Owen was stealing icing from the cake box, Mother placed a white envelope beside my plate. My name was written across it in the careful handwriting she used for church announcements. I smiled. Expecting a card, the envelope was empty. "A little something for the house each month," she said. "Now that you're earning properly." Dad stared into his coffee. Owen stopped eating. Mother squeezed my hand. "You're the one who escaped all this, sweetheart. We're proud of you." I heard pride. I did not hear the contract hidden underneath it. With my first hospital paycheck, I put $800 in the envelope and mailed it home. The following month, another envelope arrived. Then another. By the 4th month, Mother no longer needed to send them. I arranged a bank transfer for the first Friday of every month. At first, it was $800. Then $1,200. During emergencies, it became 1800 or 2000. There was always an emergency. The water heater failed. Dad's truck needed a transmission. A storm damaged the roof. Owen needed a reliable car for a new job. Aunt Denise was behind on rent. A cousin required dental work. The church kitchen needed a replacement oven, though Mother described that one as helping the family of faith. I paid. For 6 years, I volunteered for Christmas shifts because holiday pay was higher. I accepted overtime until the skin beneath my eyes looked bruised. Coworkers assumed I was saving for a large house or an early retirement. In a way, I was saving for a house. It simply was not mine. I recorded every transfer in a green notebook, not because I planned to demand repayment, but because numbers stayed honest when people did not. Words such as loan, emergency, family, and temporary changed meaning whenever Mother used them. Numbers held their shape. By the 6th year, my total had crossed $100,000. I never told anyone, not even Jonah. I met Jonah Hale when the hospital hired his carpentry company to rebuild a wheelchair ramp outside the rehabilitation wing. He stopped me after a night shift and asked what slope would be easiest for patients learning to walk again. Most contractors would have followed the minimum specification. Jonah wanted to know what actually helped. He wrote down everything I said on the back of a lumber receipt. Then he asked me to breakfast because, as he put it, dinner at 7 in the evening would be breakfast for a night nurse. For 3 years, Jonah packed meals for my shifts, repaired everything I touched, and never made my exhaustion sound like a moral failure. When he proposed, he did not offer a diamond. He tied a brass house key to a green ribbon. It belonged to a neglected little bungalow he hoped to buy. The porch sagged, the kitchen was older than both of us, and honeysuckle had swallowed the back fence. "It needs work," he said. "So do we." That sounds like a yes. It was. I took him to Roanoke once. My mother asked what he earned before asking how we met. She wanted to know whether his company provided health insurance, whether he had savings, and whether builders worked during winter. Jonah answered patiently. On the drive home, he smiled and said, "Your mother really likes practical questions." That night, after he fell asleep, she texted me. "He seems dependable. We need an extra $900 this month. Please don't mention it to your father." Even my engagement had come with an invoice. I paid it. The moment that should have woken me came the following winter. Influenza had filled every bed in our department. I worked 16 hours, slept through 2 alarms, and sent Mother's transfer 3 days late. She called at 7 the next morning. She did not shout. Her disappointment was colder than shouting. "The mortgage was due, Eliza. I had to move money around. Do you understand how humiliating that was? I'm sorry, the hospital." "You don't get to be tired," she said. "You're the one who made it." I stood in my kitchen wearing the same scrubs I had slept in and apologized again. Then I created an automatic transfer so my exhaustion could never inconvenience her. I wish I could say that sentence freed me. It did not. I believed her. I drove to work designing better reminders, blaming myself for needing sleep after keeping strangers alive all night. It took death to break the arrangement. On Tuesday afternoon in November, the charge nurse came looking for me. I recognized her expression because I had worn it before when walking toward families with terrible news. A support beam had failed at a renovation site downtown. Jonah fell 3 floors. He died before the ambulance reached the hospital. He was 32. His crew carried the coffin. 7 carpenters in uncomfortable dark suits stood in freezing rain and cried without shame. My family did not attend. Roanoke was 6 hours away, Mother said. Dad's back hurt. Owen could not miss work. They sent white carnations with a card signed in Aunt Denise's handwriting. 4 days after the funeral, Mother sent me a message. "I'm sorry you're going through this. Will Friday's transfer still arrive on time?" I read it while standing in Jonah's closet with one of his flannel shirts pressed to my face. Then I sent the money. Grief did not make me brave. At first, it made me obedient. 2 weeks later, I fainted at work. Naomi, another nurse and the closest thing I had to a sister, bought a pregnancy test and waited outside the pharmacy bathroom. 2 pink lines appeared almost immediately. At the ultrasound, the technician told me I was already 16 weeks pregnant. Irregular night shifts had hidden the signs. The doctor also told me my blood pressure was dangerously high. I had lost Jonah, was 5 months away from becoming a mother, and had no savings cushion because a second household consumed nearly half my income. I decided to call Mother. I rehearsed 3 sentences. Jonah is dead. I am pregnant. I have to stop sending money. I made the mistake of beginning with the boundary. Mom, I can't send the monthly transfer anymore. That was all I managed to say. She accused me of abandoning the family, punishing Dad, and forgetting who had sacrificed for my education. When I tried to interrupt, she spoke louder. So this is who you've become. Then she hung up. I called back twice. Both calls went to voicemail. The words "Jonah died and I'm pregnant" remained inside me. I tried Dad next. His garage radio played in the background. Dad, please listen. Something terrible happened. He was silent for several seconds. Then he said, "Don't upset your mother any more than you already have." He did not ask what happened. Nobody did. I placed my phone face down and concentrated on staying healthy enough to carry my child, 6 hours away. My mother began constructing a different story. She never told a direct lie. That was her talent. Aunt Denise posted online about children who forget the parents who raised them. At Cedar Hill Baptist Church, people asked Mother why I had missed the Christmas program. She lowered her eyes and said, "We don't really know where Eliza is emotionally anymore." By February, that became, "We hardly know where she is." By Easter, people were saying I had disappeared. Mother did not correct them. She accepted casseroles, prayer circles, sympathetic touches, and a place on the church bulletin's weekly prayer list. Every Sunday, 200 people prayed for Margaret Mercer's missing daughter. Meanwhile, I was 10 minutes from the same hospital where I had worked for years. The money that remained in my account became a car seat, medical bills, unpaid maternity leave, and the down payment on my little house. At first, keeping my own salary felt selfish. That is what years of being treated like a family account can do to a person's arithmetic. Naomi helped me move when I was 8 months pregnant. We painted the yellow door before unpacking the dishes. I wrote one long letter to my grandmother, Ruth, Dad's mother. She had always preferred an uncomfortable truth to a beautiful excuse. I told her about Jonah, the baby, the money, and Mother's phone call. I included my address and asked for nothing except that she know I was alive. No answer came. I assumed the letter had been lost. The alternative, that Ruth believed the family's version, hurt too much to examine. Renhale Mercer arrived 3 weeks early on an April morning with black hair and an angry cry. Naomi stood beside me during the delivery and cut the cord because someone who loved us should. Jonah's name appears on Ren's birth certificate. The brass key he gave me hangs in a frame beside our yellow door. For the next 3 years, I lived. That was my disappearance. I returned to work. Ren learned to crawl, then walk, then ask questions faster than I could answer them. We planted rosemary beside the porch. I moved from night shifts to days. Every December, I mailed Grandmother Ruth a Christmas card containing Ren's newest photograph. My return address was printed clearly on every envelope. I never received a reply. Eventually, the first Friday of each month became an ordinary day. My phone rang, and I no longer expected a demand. I learned a truth I should have been taught as a child. Being useful to someone is not the same as being loved by them. Then Owen knocked on my door. He had come to Greenville for a work conference. A former nursing school friend had tagged me in a hospital charity photograph online. Owen recognized me, found my street through an old public property record, and drove over before he could lose his nerve. After calling Mother from the rain, he sat on the bottom porch step for almost an hour. When I finally stepped outside, he did not ask why I had hidden Ren. He said, "Why didn't any of us know?" I tried to tell Mom. She hung up. I tried Dad. He told me not to upset her. "What about me?" "You never called." He lowered his head. That was the first honest thing that happened between us. I told him about Jonah and the pregnancy. He told me what Mother had said. that I had become unstable after the breakup, that I had rejected the family, changed numbers, and refused all contact. She never mentioned Jonah's death because admitting she knew about it would have invited questions about why nobody attended his funeral. "The church has been praying for you for years," Owen said. "They could have searched my name." He looked toward the house, where Wren was pressing both hands against the window. "Mom is organizing Homecoming Sunday this weekend," he said slowly. "It's her 20th year as church treasurer." I almost laughed at the timing. Before leaving, Owen gave me a cream-colored envelope. Mother had mailed it to his hotel after their call. Inside was an invitation written in her familiar hand, "Come home Sunday. Let God restore what pride has broken." There was no apology, no question about Jonah, no request to meet her granddaughter privately, only a stage direction. I threw the invitation into a drawer. 2 days later, a letter arrived from Grandmother Ruth. Her hands shook badly now, so the writing wandered across the page. She said she had received my first letter and every Christmas card. She had hidden them in her sewing tin because Mother frequently searched her mail and drawers to help. Ruth had been afraid that answering would reveal my address. Then came the sentence that changed my decision. "Your mother found the cards last Christmas. She read all of them. She has known where you live for 10 months. For 10 months, Mother had stood before her church and accepted prayers for a daughter whose address she possessed. She did not need me found. She needed me missing." I packed a small bag, strapped Wren into her car seat, and drove to Roanoke on Saturday morning. My plan was to visit Ruth quietly and leave before church on Sunday. Ruth was waiting on her porch with an oxygen tube beneath her nose. Wren, usually shy, climbed the steps without hesitation. My grandmother held her face between trembling hands. "There you are," she whispered. I was not sure which of us she meant. Inside, Ruth opened her sewing tin. Beneath spools of thread lay every card I had sent, secured with a rubber band, the corners softened from being handled. At 4 that afternoon, Aunt Denise arrived carrying a casserole dish she claimed she had come to return. She saw Wren counting acorns on the porch, hugged me too tightly, and left within 10 minutes. By supper, the whole church knew Mother acted quickly. At the homecoming dinner that evening, she stood before the fellowship hall and announced that God had brought her lost daughter, an unknown granddaughter, back to Roanoke. She promised that I would appear in church the next morning so the family could be made whole before the congregation. Owen texted me from the dinner. "People applauded," he wrote. "Mom is telling everyone you're coming." I sat on a motel bed while Wren slept beside me and felt as though the floor had tilted. Mother had taken my visit to an 83-year-old woman and turned it into the final scene of her redemption story. Then Owen knocked. He carried a spiral ledger from Mother's filing cabinet. "You need to see where your money went," he said. The pages were filled with her careful columns. The roof I had supposedly paid thousands to replace had cost only $400 in materials. Dad and Owen had done the labor themselves. The remaining money went to church donations made publicly in Mother's name, women's retreats she sponsored, repairs to the fellowship hall, and loans to relatives. There were dozens of names. My mother had not used my money simply to survive. She had used it to become indispensable. Every generous act increased her influence. Every loan created another person who owed her gratitude. She had purchased a throne in a very small kingdom, and I had paid for it one exhausted shift at a time. Then Owen opened the oldest section of the ledger. One entry from 1990 read, "Sold wedding ring. Mother's overdue rent." Margaret had been 24 and newly married. She had pawned her ring to rescue her own parents. They never repaid her. "I think she believes this is what daughters are for," Owen said. Understanding did not excuse her. It only made the damage older. Mother had inherited a wound and turned it into a family tradition. I could pity the young woman she had been without sacrificing the woman I had become. I still planned to leave at dawn. Around 3 in the morning, Wren stirred and asked, "Mommy, do I have another grandma?" I could not answer. My silence frightened me more than Mother's anger. If I left without speaking, she would fill the empty space again. One day, Ren might hear that I had been ashamed to face my family, or that I had hidden her out of spite. Silence had protected me for 4 years. Now it would protect the lie. At sunrise, I ironed a dark green dress with the motel iron. I braided Ren's hair and let her choose a red ribbon. I put Jonah's brass key in my pocket. Then I texted Owen, "Save a seat near the aisle for Ruth. Ren and I will sit behind her." Cedar Hill Baptist Church held 180 people, but that morning extra chairs filled the back wall. Cars lined the grass. A banner hung above the entrance, "Welcome home, Eliza." We entered during the second hymn, heads turned row by row. Ruth sat in front wearing her Sunday pearls, the oxygen tube looped over her ears. Ren and I took the pew behind her. Dad stood near the rear doors with his hands folded, looking like a man attending a funeral he had helped arrange. Mother wore blue and stood beside the pulpit holding a microphone. After the offering, she began. She thanked God for ending seasons of sorrow. She spoke of forgiveness, prodigal children, and a mother's love that never closes its door. At carefully chosen moments, she pressed a lace handkerchief beneath dry eyes, then she looked directly at me. "Eliza, sweetheart, come stand with me, and thank everyone who prayed for your return." Nearly 200 faces turned. For 1 second, I saw two futures. In the first, I smiled, walked forward, and allowed Mother to forgive me for something I had never done. We would pose for photographs. Ren would become proof of a restored family, and the lie would harden around us. In the second, I told the truth and destroyed any chance of returning to the role of obedient daughter. Ruth looked back and gave me the smallest nod. I stood. I walked to the front but did not take the microphone. The church had high wooden ceilings and good acoustics. My ordinary voice carried. "I did not disappear," I said. The room became still. "I sent money to my family every month for 6 years. When I stopped, they stopped asking about me." In this family, those two things were treated as the same event. A bulletin slipped from someone's lap and struck the floor. The total was $107,460. I had never said the figure aloud before. Several people in the middle rows lowered their eyes. They recognized portions of it. A security deposit, a transmission, a medical bill, a church oven bearing Mother's name on the donor plaque. The year everyone was told I vanished, the man I was going to marry died in a construction accident. 4 months later, I gave birth to our daughter. I tried to tell my mother. She hung up when I said I could no longer send money. I called my father and told him something terrible had happened. He asked me not to upset her. Nobody asked one more question. Dad closed his eyes, Mother's handkerchief lowered. "For the last 10 months, I continued, my mother has known my address. She read the cards I sent my grandmother. Yet she continued allowing this church to pray for a missing woman." Mother lifted the microphone. "How dare you humiliate this family?" Her voice cracked through the speakers. Mine did not. "You once told me I was not allowed to be tired because I was the one who made it. I was allowed to be tired, Mom. I was allowed to grieve. I was allowed to protect my child. I simply was not allowed to do any of those things here." The congregation divided before my eyes. Some people looked at me with horror, others with compassion. A few stared stubbornly at the hymnals in their laps. That is the cost of telling the truth. It does not convince everyone. It only prevents the lie from remaining unanimous. I knew I had just lost the imaginary future in which Mother apologized and invited me home without conditions. I grieved it even as I stood there. But that future had charged me for admission my entire life. I went back to Ren, took her hand, and led her to Ruth. "Ren, this is your great-grandmother. She is the reason I still believe family can mean something good." Ruth touched Ren's cheek. Ren leaned into her hand, even some of the hardest faces softened. I lifted my daughter and started down the center aisle. Owen moved to help Ruth. As I passed the pulpit, Mother lowered the microphone. For once, she spoke quietly enough that only I could hear. Everything I did was for this family. She believed it. That was the saddest part. For a moment, I saw her at 24, surrendering her wedding ring at a pawnshop counter, learning that a daughter's value was measured by what she gave away. Being needed is not the same as being loved. I told her. I hope someday someone loves you without charging you for it. Then I walked outside. Cold sunlight spilled through the open doors. Wren blinked against it and asked, "Is church finished?" "Ours is," I said. We had almost reached the car when Owen ran after us, his tie loose and his breathing ragged. He did not say, "Mother meant well." He did not ask me to apologize. He did not explain Dad's silence. He looked at Wren resting against my shoulder and asked, "Can I visit her?" No messages from Mom, no envelopes, just me being her uncle. It was the first thing anyone in my family had requested without attaching a debt. "Sundays," I said, "and bring nothing." 6 weeks later, Ruth sat on my porch in Greenville with her sewing tin on her lap. Owen had driven her down. She and Wren spent an hour trying to thread a needle, their 4 hands trembling for different reasons. When they finally succeeded, they cheered loudly enough for the neighbors to hear. Mother sent a 3-page letter. It contained scripture, explanations, and many references to family loyalty. The word sorry appeared once, but only in the sentence, "I am sorry grief has confused your judgment." I put the letter in a drawer and returned to cooking dinner. It hurt less than I expected. Not because the wound had disappeared, but because I was no longer using it to support the rest of my life. Dad sent a card later. Inside, in pencil, he wrote, "I am sorry I chose silence. I kept it. I have not answered yet. Forgiveness is not another bill that must be paid by Friday. Owen calls every Sunday." Wren shows him crooked drawings and pancakes shaped like creatures no scientist could identify. Mother resigned as church treasurer, officially because of her health. A few relatives have started repaying small amounts through Ruth, though I never requested the money. The old family machine still exists. It simply runs without me. Last weekend, Wren and I repainted the front door. She got yellow paint on her hair, the porch boards, and one extremely offended neighborhood cat. "Why is our door this color?" she asked. I looked at the brass key framed inside, the key to the life Jonah and I never got to build, and then at the house his daughter and I had built anyway. "Because yellow looks like mourning," I said. She considered that and shook her head. "It looks like ours." She was right. For years, I believed love was something I had to keep purchasing. Every transfer, holiday shift, apology, and swallowed question was another payment toward a place in my family's story. But real love does not send an invoice. It does not require exhaustion as proof of loyalty. It does not erase you when you stop being useful. If you must pay to remain in someone's story, leave and write your own. The people who truly love you will never charge admission to read it.